What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video. I really appreciate it. Before we get started, I do want to just ask you guys to hit that subscribe button nice and early in the video. It really will help me grow out my channel. I know there are some people who watch, maybe you click on a few videos, but haven't clicked subscribe, and I would really appreciate it if you could. It really helped me grow out this channel, like I said, and really be able to get you guys the content quicker, and at least notify you guys about it. Also, hit the little bell icon next to subscribe, because that'll actually notify you on your phone when I post videos, which will be super helpful for me, and then you guys will actually be able to watch my videos. So without further ado, let's get into this review. So today we're going to be talking about a movie I just recently watched for the first time on Blu-ray at home. Is Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. So yeah guys, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. I really love this movie. I was kind of blown away. I chose not to watch it in theaters at all because it wasn't something that I was actually excited for at all. I was a huge fan of the first movie. I said that in my last review. Growing up, the first Jumanji was one of my favorite movies. I really loved it. I watched it so many times, and it really held a special place in my heart. I never really felt the need for a sequel unless Robin Williams came back. I always felt like the end of the first movie left you with a perfect ending where there could be more that happens, but there doesn't need to be more that happens, and it just kind of shows that the board game will find more people over time. And when I heard that this movie was coming out and that they were switching the board game concept to a video game, I was not about it. I mean, anybody who knows me, when this movie was coming out, I was vocally not about it. And you know, usually I'm very open to sequels. I'm very open to films expanding in sequels or franchises. And I love to see what creators will do. I have to sometimes step back and realize I didn't make the first movie, and I'm not involved in making this one. So I really do have that mentality when I watch movies, and I like to see what different filmmakers are going to bring to the table and change up, you know, change it up. That's something that excites me and that I'm always open to. And in this case, I really just wasn't open to it. It just felt like it was just taking the original beautiful concept of what Jumanji was and just making it like cheesy in a modern sense, almost taking away from, like, as much as the first movie, you know, kind of had an element of cheese to it, it also was grounded in a lot of ways. And I felt like the concept of the board game was just far better, to be honest. I felt like that concept really was able to, you could do more with it in my mind. At least that's what I thought when I was watching the trailers for this movie. And I will say, before I get into all my positives about this movie, like I said, I did love this movie, so I was wrong. I was very wrong. I actually skipped watching this in theaters. And before I get into all the positives about this movie that I have, the main negative that I can say is that even though I really did enjoy this film, I think I will always wish that the film had remained about a board game. I get what they were trying to go for. I appreciate it. As somebody who plays video games almost every single day, right before I filmed this video, I'm headed to work right now. I was just at home playing a little bit of a video game that I'm playing right now, and so I play video games all the time. It's one of my main hobbies, and so it's not the video game concept in general that I didn't like, but it just didn't feel like it needed to be Jumanji. It was like, name it something else, you know what I mean? So going into this, I would say the first 15 to 20 minutes of the movie, I just felt like it was just kind of, I wasn't hooked in, to be honest. Me and my girlfriend who watched it together, we were kind of nitpicking things. I wasn't trying to be overly nitpicky when I was watching it, but it was hard not to, because the first 15 minutes or so, I really wasn't hooked into this movie. I felt like they were just kind of taking the premise of Jumanji and kind of like shoehorning in this way of making it a video game, and that's something I definitely still feel. If you have seen the movie, you know what, I'm just gonna give you a quick synopsis, to be honest. So right out of the gate, the first kind of 15 minutes or so set up the fact that essentially this guy gets the board game, this kid gets the board game, and he literally looks at the board game and says, "Who plays board games anymore?"
I found something. You gotta check this out.
Who plays board games anymore?
And then overnight, the board game just turns itself into a video game. That's gonna be my biggest gripe. I will say right out of the gate, my biggest gripe of the film is that I just felt like that was just like lazy. That was just like, hey, let's make it a board game this time, but this time the board game is gonna hear that people don't play board games anymore, and it's gonna change it to a video game. It's just kind of like, like I get it, like they just needed to get it moving, to get it to where the actual movie's happening, and it just felt very much like a shoehorned in kind of like response, or it just didn't feel legitimate. It didn't feel like an intelligent way or some sort of really creative way, I guess is what I should say, of making it a video game, or why it would be a video game, other than just like, oh, the board game changes. Because if you remember in the first Jumanji, one of my favorite things about it was the way it opens. The movie opens up back in the day, like there's these two guys walking around with lanterns, and they're literally terrified. It's out later in the middle of like a thunderstorm, and they're going out as like back in the day. I don't remember the year. I think it does say it at the beginning of the first Jumanji film. But like these guys are walking around with lanterns out in the middle of the night and digging a hole to bury this thing that then Robin Williams' character ends up finding years later. And I felt like that concept of this board game that already draws you in with drumming sounds. I think that if I had a board game in the house, that even if I was like, I'm not really interested in playing it, but drumming sounds were coming out of it and pulling me towards it, I would probably be very interested, and that's what pulled people towards it in the first movie. And I figured that concept now would have almost been stronger, because kids today, you could have taken some young cool actors and really like had them be like, I don't want to play this, and then have them hear the drumming sounds and be like, well, maybe we should. And it would have been almost more interesting, because there would have been that disassociation from how do you play a board game, let's roll the dice, all that kind of stuff. Whereas I just feel like it was a little bit lazy in the way that they just kind of made it a video game. It just kind of happens. And so that's my biggest gripe right out of the gate. Like I said, I think I will always feel like this movie should have been centered on a board game more than a video game. I will always feel that way. So after about the first 15 to 20 minutes, and when we finally get into the board game, I gotta say, I started to love this movie. I mean, I was pretty blown away. As somebody who loves video games, it really took that feeling of a video game and the different tropes that come with a video game and made them fun and exciting in this movie. And I loved the performances by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, and Karen Gillan. They played the teenage kids that go into the video game so well. They took the archetypes of what those kind of characters were and really just elevated them, but also, I mean, I really did feel like The Rock was this awkward teenager in this movie. I really felt like Jack Black was a teenage girl who always like obsessed with her phone.
Don't look at it! No!
I'm an overweight middle-aged man. Wait a second, where's my phone?
Karen Gillan plays a character that is kind of shy, but like a girl who doesn't try to like fit in with people because she feels like she will be judged. And Kevin Hart plays this football player who's a lot taller. They play a lot of jokes on the fact that he's a lot smaller in this movie. Obviously, the short jokes with Kevin Hart.
Where's the rest of me?
But altogether, I really enjoyed everybody's performances. I felt like everybody gave a really comedic performance that plays off of the archetypes that they were before they got into the game. And it really sold. I felt a consistency across the film. I felt like all the acting was very consistent. Nobody takes it too seriously. But at the same time, it's grounded for the kind of movie it is. Obviously, they're in a video game, so it's not as grounded. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And going deeper into the film, I was actually really pleasantly surprised at how much it felt like a genuine Jumanji sequel. Like I said, I walked into this really worried, concerned, and even after getting the Blu-ray, I was still concerned because the first 15-20 minutes didn't like grip me. I felt like there was some lazy kind of elements that were taking away from some of it. Yeah, so right out of the gate, I loved the performances, and I also really enjoyed the visuals. I enjoyed seeing this world of Jumanji. They really tap into what Jumanji was like inside of the game, which kind of added a lot of elements to your thought process of what Robin Williams' character, Alan Parrish, was going through when he gets sucked into the game in the first movie. And I really loved what they did with that. I really enjoyed what they did with that, and how they connected everything, and how they really made it feel like a proper sequel rather than a reboot or something that calls itself a sequel but it's really not. I felt like it's very much its own thing. You can watch this movie without having watched the other one, but if you were a big fan of the first one, there's tons of little nods and connections that really expand it and make it feel like a proper sequel. And that's something for me I really appreciated. I really appreciated the love that went into this to make it feel like a Jumanji sequel while also making it its own thing. And I gotta say, I praised the film for what it was able to do. Going into it, like I said, I had very low expectations, and it was such a one of those films that you're pleasantly surprised by. Is always one of those films is always kind of the best for me, because there's plenty of films that you can walk into and are already expecting something awesome. You know, a lot of times I'll go, for instance, I'm going to be going to see Into the Spider-Verse this weekend, and you know, I'm going in with subdued expectations, so I'm not like super disappointed or anything, but I've heard amazing things. I was already sold on the animation and different characters and everything happening based on the trailers. So it's one of those movies that I was already going to be like, oh, I'm already excited for it. I'm expecting great things. I've heard great things from people that I trust, and so that for me is like awesome. And when you walk into a movie that you have lower expectations for and are thoroughly entertained throughout it, and have this pleasantly surprised feeling, it always makes for such a great movie and film watching experience. To be honest, I loved it so much, and this is a movie I could see myself popping on countless occasions. Again, there's a lot of things there. There's the humor, there's the acting, there's the video game element that they did so well. They really did make it feel like a video game, and for somebody who plays video games on a constant basis, I was laughing at some of the tropes and the different things that made it feel like I was watching a video game film. It's funny because it's not a movie based on a video game, but I almost would say for me it's like the best video game film, if that makes sense, just because of the fact that it's about a video game. So yeah, that right there, those are all my biggest positives. I really don't have too much negative to say outside of everything I said at the beginning of the video regarding my own thoughts, and I think that that's maybe a bias to how much I loved the first film, and the fact that I still, when the movie ended, would have wished that it would have remained a board game. But for the movie that we got and the premise that we got, it was really well done, really well acted. I enjoyed the script. I found it was funny. Some of the CG at times is very like cartoonish, but I think it works for the fact that they're in a video game. Some of the CG in the movie did feel a little cartoonish to me, but I think it works for the kind of movie it is, because they are in a video game, and they make jokes about cutscenes and different things and that video games do all the time, and I found that to be such an entertaining part of the film. And like I said, they really do have a lot of really great nods to the first movie and made it really feel like a proper sequel. And I think that's the one thing that I can say as a huge fan of the first Jumanji, is that I wanted this film to feel like a proper sequel. And you know, if they make another one, I'm really interested to see what they do, because after this, I'm open to it. Now, do I want one necessarily? Do I feel like we need another sequel? No, unless I would honestly love to see them go back to the board game concept at some point, without rebooting it, like a proper, just like a third sequel. But you know, for what the movie that this was, I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm very curious to see what you guys saw. I know a lot of people kind of had a similar mentality. I know some people who didn't really watch the first Jumanji or had no connection to it, just walked into it and saw, oh, that was awesome, that was really funny, that was an amazing movie. And I know that a lot of people who were big fans of the first movie walked out kind of surprised at how much they liked it, or even one of the main things I've heard people say is like that movie was a lot better than it deserved to be, or that they expected it to be. So I think that's the overwhelming kind of thought that I was feeling the entire time, is it was just so much better than I expected it to be. And throughout the entire time, I was never bored. I was completely entertained. I can't even say that there's very many lulls throughout the film outside of the first 15-20 minutes, but it's more the setup and the fact that I was so connected to the first film that I felt that they were kind of doing like a cheap way of expanding this movie. But once the movie kicks in and they are in the video game, it's entertaining. I had a great time with it. I won't get too deep into like, you know, the story. You can watch the trailer and it kind of gives away the basic synopsis and you can kind of guess what's gonna happen. But it's one of those movies you just have to watch because it's just entertaining. I think this is the epitome of an entertaining film. So I'll end it right there, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts down below on what you thought on Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you like the first one better? Do you like this one better? Yeah, let me know all that down below. And remember, please hit subscribe and hit the little bell icon next to subscribe. I would really appreciate that, so you guys can know when my videos are up. And make sure you share this if you know anybody who would be into these kind of videos, or if you feel like I have the personality that, you know, some people would be into like watching. Please share it with people. I would really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much again for watching. See you later. Bye bye.
I'll carry you. Come on.
I would rather die.
Get on my back.
Nope, I'm gonna die.